SANTACO is today expected to give an update on its week-long stay away in the Western Cape. Taxi operations were suspended last week across the province over bylaws which saw about 6,000 minibus taxis impounded. City Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis says the minister has taken a stance to side with the taxis rather than the commuters who need protection from unsafe transportation.
And what's interesting to me, I forwarded some articles to the minister, and I can forward them to you as well, of impoundments in other cities in South Africa. Durban, for example, recently announced that they had impounded 73 taxis, minibus taxis, in one day in a blitz operation in Durban. I don't think there's any day that we have impounded 73 taxis. And SANTACO is very upset about that. There's no claim there that they haven't got the interests of the poor at heart. There it is kind of championed and applauded as standing up for the rule of law and road safety. So I do think, with respect, I take with a pinch of salt the constant drone that you will hear whenever we do something about reducing it to a matter of race. I think that we have to do what is right for the people who use minibus taxis, the passengers, not for the drivers, not for the owners. Our responsibility is to the passengers. And that is why it's so strange for me that the minister has kind of turned herself into a minister of taxis, not a minister of transport. A minister of transport acts in the interests of commuters. A minister of taxis acts in the interests of taxi owners. We are very clear on which side of that line we stand.
Hill-Lewis has slammed the Transport Minister's call for the city to release impounded taxis.
Interest in undermining national government whatsoever. The minister does not have the legal authority to instruct us to release the taxis. So it's not about undermining. It's about just sticking to the law. She does not have that authority. So if she is unhappy with the way that her law, the National Land Transport Act, is applied, she's free to change it. We don't have that power. We don't run the National Parliament. She's free to change it. But I believe that the law was written in a way to try and help keep people safer, and that it should be implemented to its fullest degree. And just because we might be the only ones doing that in South Africa does not mean that we should attract the criticism and the ire of the minister. In fact, if I was in her position, I would be saying, here is a city that's actually taking the law that we have written and we have given them and is actually doing something with it. And that should be applauded. We do have an independent adjudicator. It's called the courts. And again, I've said to the minister and to SANTACO, why, if they object so strongly, why haven't they taken us to court? It's strange to me that their first avenue is to burn things in the streets, or to go on TV and make a lot of noise and shout about us, but they haven't used the avenue open to every person in a democracy that is founded on the rule of law. They can challenge the impoundments. They can challenge our decisions in court if they want to. And I think it is telling that they have never done so.
Let's touch base with Nasiphi because SANTACO and Nasiphi is due to give a briefing if they haven't already. So you've got the Transport Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga in the Western Cape. You've also got the Police Minister in the Western Cape. What's the latest?
The latest is that the taxi industry, or rather the body of the taxi industry, SANTACO, postponing their media briefing for 11:30 to later on in the day, as we understand that the Minister of Transport is currently in meetings with government officials, Director Generals rather, and we understand that following that meeting with the Director Generals, the Minister will be engaging with the mother body SANTACO in the Western Cape, following that week-long stay away and the tension that we've seen playing out not only in the streets but between government and also the taxi industry. Not too long ago, speaking to the chairperson of SANTACO in the Western Cape, Mandla Manas, saying that they are now heading to Cape Town, where clergies are basically going to be meeting and praying following what has transpired in the Western Cape. However, also going as far as saying that as much as the industry is bleeding, they will do whatever it takes in order order for government to give them an ear, and that is the impounding of their vehicles. And they are saying that as much as today was the last day that they had announced of them embarking on the stay away, it will only be determined following the meeting with the minister, or rather the outcomes of the meeting that the minister has now, that will be, relayed to them later on this afternoon, where they will then decide whether or not they resume services tomorrow, operations. And SANTACO basically saying that not only is the industry bleeding, but they also have the fear that is hanging over their heads that when they resume services, based on a statement released by the city of Cape Town last week, when the violence erupted in various communities and the torching of buses and trucks, that the city will be impounding 25 vehicles of the minibus taxi industry. So they do fear that tomorrow, when they hit the streets and resume services and operations, that could also be a possibility. However, everything will be determined by the outcomes of the meeting that the minister had, and whether or not SANTACO is satisfied with that. We do also understand that SANTACO has had a number of issues with the City of Cape Town's amended bylaw. However, we know the city is saying that they have not used the bylaw to impound any minibus taxis. SANTACO is saying that as much as they've approached the courts, and that the matter will be heard next year, February 2024, they will be engaging with their legal team to see whether or not that matter could be brought forward, as they believe that this is indeed urgent for the matter to be tackled immediately rather.
Thank you very much, Nasiphi, for that report.